Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MTG Sin Senpai. So it's been a little bit of time since I've done one of these videos, but essentially I'm doing a couple of my draft decks that I had very recently. A couple nights ago, we did, well, at one of my LGSs that I assist at, we do double drafts, pretty much. We'll do one draft at 7:30, and then whenever we finish around 10:30, 11-ish, and depending on how long it takes for some other people to show up a little bit later, we'll draft again at 11:30 to midnight, and then probably finish around 4, 3:30, 4 in the morning at times, depending, give or take. And so yeah, that is where these two particular decks came from. I also do have a Commander preview, Commander Masters preview deck that I was happy to participate in, and I have that particular deck as well. That's going to be in another video that's going to be very shortly. Actually, you know what? I think I will. Give me 1 second here. Let's see. Just got to pull that out here and set that to the side. And then I should have gotten this ready ahead of time before starting this video, but it is what it is. And this just proves that I do my best to try and get these done whenever I do these one at a just right away. Let's see, do I still have it put together? I believe I still have it put together. Where did I put that thing? There it is. There we go. So I also have my Commander Masters preview deck to go over as well. So let's see if I can go through these pretty quickly. I'll kind of go over my for the Lord of the Rings. These two draft decks, Lord of the Rings has been a lot of fun to draft, and I've done a good handful of them. Some of the picks, I'll admit, I did pick because I am currently in the process with me and the wife. We are looking to collect a playset of all the rares and mythics, and a good majority of the rares and mythics also have specialty versions, both borderless and showcase versions. In the binder that we have, I'm trying to. There was only so many slots, so we're trying to get it all put together. And then I think after we finish that video, or actually not video, after we finish that binder, I'll make another video to kind of go over and show the way that we have it set up. So to me, we're in the process of finishing it. There's still a good handful of cards that we're missing. So you'll see sometimes one of the picks that I made, it was for that particular binder, but it doesn't happen the most often now because we've drafted the set so much and we've opened so much of the product. It's not as often, but then there's still some that I don't have, which are good handful of the mythics. Luckily, we already collected 4 Bowmasters in regular and 4 Bowmasters in borderless. So we have that completed. So that, thankfully, there's that. But other than that, we also have a place of the One Ring. But anyway, I'm going to ramble on and on about that. Let me go ahead and break into it. This is deck number 1. These are the cards I decided not to run, but the reasons I picked them. I particularly like the 4-mana, 4/4 Flying Vigilance bird that makes all of their birds vigilant. There's not too many birds in the particular draft set, but if you have them, they are kind of ridiculous. This is one of those cards that I decided to pick for the binder itself, like I was mentioning earlier. But for the Elf Scry payoff deck, this is one of the best payoff cards for it. So yeah, it's still a good card, but I did not go that particular route with this draft deck. Gimli's Fury, it's a pretty solid battle trick if you really need it. I cut it because I wasn't in red in this particular deck, but I took it if needed. Surrounded by Orcs, I do like this particular card. Not only is it milling your opponents, but it's generating a 3/3 dude. Or if you're really needing to do so, you can mill yourself out or not mill yourself out, but mill yourself to generate some value in your particular graveyard. There's not too many graveyard synergies, but there's a few of them in the game itself. It's a decent 3/4 flying body at 5 mana that lets you scry 2, which is decent for the elf payoff. Is it the best pick? Not really because of the 5 mana, but it's still decent. Captain of Umbar, the fact that it allows you to draw a card and discard a card, the looting definitely helps a lot, especially with the fact that there's a lot of draw your second card effects in this set. And then there's actually one card that if you draw a card during your opponent's turn, it actually does effects as well. So that's why I picked that particular one. I think I had the intent to kind of go in the blue direction, but I decided not to in the end. Treason of Isengard is a pretty decent one. It generates you a dude. I like the mass orcs in this particular set. I know the mass zombies army from Hour of Devastation, and what was the other one? I think it was or the Spark. Whenever they did them, they were okay cards that amassed, but the cards in this particular set that amassed, I like them a lot more. The Flash 3/2 creature is pretty solid, and the fact that it's an elf that scries one, it definitely helps. This particular battle trick is one that I like. I like cards that tuck, and the fact that you can cast it at instant speed is really solid. Lorien revealed. I know that this particular card has shot up a lot, especially in the fact that it does so many things. It basic land cycles for any island, be it a basic land, or I'm sorry, when I say basic, island cycles for any island, so you can get yourself the shocks and the potential ones that have that basic print, the triomes. Or if you happen to have it in the late game, it's literally 5 mana draw 3 cards, which is pretty standard value at that particular rate. Interest Restoration is it's a hero that has upside, which I actually really like. Only a drawback is the fact that they entered the battlefield tapped, but typically you would cast this at the end of your opponent's turn, and if you have at least a 4 power or greater creature, you're getting 3 lands. And then if your opponent decides to burn their removal to try and counterproduct your bonus, you still get your 2 lands, so it still nets an extra land. Bombadil's Song is a pretty solid, the fact that it gives a +1/+1 and Hexproof until end of turn, and the Ring Tempting You, it does a lot of things for just 2 mana. I believe I had to cut that one, if I remember, yeah, it was green-white. I had a lot of playables, and I decided to cut that one particularly. Chance Met Elves is a pretty solid for the Elf Scry payoff. Eastmark Cavalier. I really like the 2 mana 2/2 creatures that have vigilance and upside. The fact that it destroys a goblin or orc after it deals damage to it, mind you, it's just damage period. It's actually pretty powerful. I like it because amass orcs decks are a thing. Frodo Sorin's Bane. I picked this and I probably should have run it. I actually ran 3 of the Eastmark Cavaliers over having a Frodo in the deck. I didn't have any black, so I kind of overlooked it, but one of my buddies actually pointed out this could have been just potentially a 3 mana 2/3 lifelinker in my deck instead of multiple 2/2s, but it is what it is. I decided not to run it myself. Slip on the Ring. This particular card is not the greatest. It is technically a flicker effect that tempts you as well, but I don't know. It just hasn't performed too well for me, so I always cut that. Banished from Edoras. The fact that it's a 5 mana exile card at sorcery speed is a drawback, but that upside of possibly exiling something for 3 whenever it's tapped, it's pretty strong, and the fact that it exiles is actually an upside for me. And then Tale of Tinuvale. I could be pronouncing that horribly wrong. I like this particular saga a lot myself. The fact that you have an indestructible dude helps a lot. Also, the fact that it allows you to return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield is kind of absurd. And that lifelink until end of turn it just does a lot for 5 mana. For 5 mana, it's a little expensive, but it's essentially a delayed reanimation spell, which is the reason why I picked it. I had to make cuts, and I had a lot of playables, and I think I was in the green-white in this particular deck. And whenever I made the cuts, that's one of the things that had to be cut for me personally. But I like doing, if you're running any variation with this and white, any of the basic land cyclers that are creatures, you do the land cycle, and then later on you can reanimate them with this, which is actually pretty solid. At least it performed well for me whenever I did those particular tricks. Going into the thick of the deck itself, the 1 mana 1/1 that pumps for 5 or pumps for 3, depending on if you have a legendary or not. It's a human soldier that I really like, and it helped me a lot in my games, and the fact that I got 2 of them made it be very easy for me to run both of them in the deck. The You Cannot Pass. The drawback is that you have to have a legendary creature for this to be beneficial, but the fact that if you have the Ring Tempt You at all, making any of your creatures legendary makes this pretty absurd. And also the fact that you can cast this after the blocker is declared before damage is dealt allows you to kind of get rid of some of the bigger, more annoying creatures depending on what your opponent has. I've already talked about the Eastmark, and I ran 2. I thought I ran 3, so we're going to go kind of glaze over that. The Nimble Hobbit is actually a pretty solid 2 mana 1/3. The fact that it allows you to tap by either paying a bunch of mana or sacrificing food, especially into the late game whenever you need to kind of get in there for that extra point of damage, this definitely did help me win a couple games. Samwise, the Stout-Hearted, is one of the most fun battle tricks, I feel. Just the fact that, like, after blockers are done and after you've declared attacks and it's like, okay, my creature died, second main, flash in Sam, get that creature back, and tempt. It just does a lot of value, and the fact that it's a kind of 2-for-1, and the ring tempting, bringing back a creature, just all around, just a really good card. And it's a 2-mana 2/1 that's already pretty solid. Hobbit Sting was just one of those fun. I like the fact that you have to count or have creatures in play, kind of gives it a drawback, but also the fact that it also counts food does help your count a lot. I actually got two of my opponents because they're like, oh, you only had 2 creatures. I was trying to kill a 3 power or 3 toughness creature, but I had 2 creatures and a food, and that was just enough to get through. So this definitely is a lot of fun. Ent's Fury is one of those, if you have a creature with a big enough power, it gives it essentially +2/+2 and lets you fight something, but one of those +1/+1s being a +1/+1 counter. I like this fight spell a lot, so that's why I ran this one. Revive the Shire is a pretty solid recursion piece that I use a lot whenever I'm running green. The fact that it allows you to get any permanent back is actually pretty helpful, so that's why I like to run that. Arwen Mortal Queen is an insane and stupid and busted card. Initially, I kind of overlooked the card myself personally, but the fact that number one, it's a 3-mana 2/2 indestructible creature is already pretty solid. The fact that it only costs you 1 mana and you remove the indestructibility to give another creature indestructible until end of turn is already pretty stupid. But the fact that it also gives both herself and the other targeted creature +1/+1 counters and a lifelink counters, it's absurd. Like, my opponent had to read this a good maybe 5 or 6 times just to be like, that's dumb. And just to confirm, I was not BSing. This card is really strong, and it was a pack one pick one for me, and it really drove me into the green-white colors, and it won me the game, so there's that. We got a Mirror Guardian. It's just a solid 3-mana 4/2, and the only reason I say it's solid because yes, it gets traded off with little things, but the fact that when it dies, the ring tempts you, I like that. Also, it helps with my Entis Restoration. The only reason I didn't run both is because I didn't need both, so that's why there's one in the deck and one in the backup. On the Barrow Downs. It's not the best removal card, but it's something that I had, and I definitely ran it, and the fact that I had 2 definitely helps run that. It did lock down a lot of my opponents and did help me get in for a few of my games. The fact that you playing this on an Orc Army card, it does not kill it completely because of the fact that it gets rid of the creature types. It makes it a spirit, so it's no longer an army, so the army can still grow if they happen to make it again. Protector of Gondor is a pretty solid human card. The fact that it's still 4 mana for 4 power and toughness, it's perfect value, and the fact that it makes a token is pretty relevant, and the fact that there's human soldiers as well is pretty relevant as well. Build the Pony is just a fun card. I really like him, and the fact that fun example that I did, I made him my ring bearer, so he was a 1/4. My opponent only had 2 power, so could not block it, and after it gets through, I could sack the food, make Bill do 4 damage. And I believe, even if I did it before combat damage, he assigns combat damage as if with his toughness rather than his power, so it doesn't even pump him. I could potentially, I would never do it, but I would swing in or I could swing in, and before I swing in, I sack the food, make it do where he deals power damage equal to his toughness rather than his power, and then still swing in and not be blocked unless they have a 1 power creature. Butterbur, just a solid. If you're doing the food synergies, this definitely helps, and of course these two being together really helped a lot. I actually was able to swing in and just keep using up the food and do that a few times. This 4-mana 4/4, it's actually pretty solid. It's already a decent value for a 4-mana 4/4, and the fact that it gets bigger if you have legendaries, which there are plenty of legendaries in the set. Hell, even if worst case scenario you only have it be your ring bearer, it's still a 5/5 that's swinging potentially every turn. This particular card I'm a big fan of. The fact that it gets +1/+1 counters is already bonkers. The fact that it also gives them all vigilance is dumb, and it also lets the ring tempt you. So it's just a bunch of value for a 4-mana card, and this is a great way to, like, essentially just win a game, and if not win a game, have the tides turn in your favor, essentially just pumping your team and just going in. And a fun trick was playing that with the Esquire of the King. So declaring attacks, and after declaring attacks, pumping the team, because it's vigilant and doesn't say anything that I couldn't do that. So it was a nice battle trick that did that. War of the Last Alliance is an absurd card because of the sheer amount of legendaries. I pretty much was able to play Arwen, the Immortal Queen, pretty much every game because I was able to get it with this. And the fact that it gives your entire team double strike is just absurd. So it's a pretty solid saga. The Banish I had to run, or I decided to run because I didn't have too much removal. I had my Enraged Horn, this plus the You Shall Not Pass, and I had this be my Ring Bearer. So swinging it in, my opponent blocked, thinking that they would be able to kill my creature. I then kill their creature with the You Cannot Pass, and then I hit them for the full 4 damage because of the trample. And then this is just one of those basic land cyclers that is really strong. And early game, go get you your land, fix your land up if you need it. And late game, it's a 6 mana 5/7 with reach that also generates a food, which is kind of absurd. And food's payoffs were just great. And this particular deck was able to go undefeated for me for the first draft. Lots of fun there. Here's the second draft. It's a decent mana fix if you have a bunch of legendaries that are multicolor. So that I picked it with the intent to run it, but I decided not to. Wizards of Rockets is probably one of the second worst. The worst being the Shire Scarecrows, because you had to. I'm not a big fan of the filter creature, and the fact that this is a single use. It's like, they're not the best mana fixers, but I grabbed them because I thought I was going to go. I forget if I went 3. Oh, I did go 3 colors with this particular deck, but in the end I didn't need them, so I decided to cut them. This particular card is okay. I'm not the biggest fan of it, but if you're doing the food synergies or the halfling synergies, it definitely helps a lot. Butterbur, we've already kind of discussed, is a solid pick. The Forge Anew I actually picked just because I got it for the binder. In this particular limited format, it's pretty awful. It is not a good card. I do believe that I remember seeing an article talking about it being used in some particular format, but I never really went with it. Pipian Guard of the Citadel is another one of those cards that I decided to pick up for the collection as well. But it's actually a pretty solid 2 mana 2/2 Vigilant Ward 1 creature that allows you to give another one of your creatures protection from another card type of your choice until end of turn. So that's actually, it's pretty solid blue-white card. But I just, the reason I picked it this particular time around was for the collection. Birthday Escape is an absurd card, especially if you're trying to turbo tempt, and if you get your attempt up to 4, this is one of those things that just gets you up there quick, rarely quick. Surrounded by Orcs is once again just a solid card I like. This particular 6 mana 5/6 is absurd. The fact that it triggers off of itself and other tree folk. Now, there's not too many tree folk, but this was one of those game finishers that I kind of hate draft picked later on. But if I was in green in this particular draft, I would have definitely run it. It's a solid flying 2/1 that can draw you cards, so that's why I picked that particular one. Gimli's Axe, I like the goofy equipments, especially when you need to kind of eke in and get in there, but it's not really something that you absolutely have to run. Fire of Orthanc is actually an amazing card. It's both a removal for artifacts, because there's a couple artifacts that if they hit the board and you can't resolve or get rid of them, they pretty much can win the game. And the fact that it allows you to also make your opponent not able to block unless they have flyers, that's just an absurd clause that can help you to win a game. Aomer, I grabbed this one just because I thought I was going to go into red, but I didn't have enough red payoffs to make it worth it, and the fact that it was double red pips, so I decided not to go with this particular one. But it's a solid 4 mana 4/4 haste creature that on the off chance that one of your legendary creatures die when you attack, you're getting extra combats. It's a fun card, especially if you're doing the red-white aggro. That's pretty solid. The Harridan Spearmaster, I've heard mixed feelings about this from some people. Some people really like it, some people don't. It's just a 3 mana 2/3 that can pump another dude that gets in. And if you have a bunch of these out there, unfortunately it cannot target itself, but if you have others, they can target each other, and then they all swing in as 3/3s. Or you can just make something thing really absurdly big and just keep on pounding with that. 5 mana 4/3 that tempted. This one is actually not too bad, especially if you get the ring to level 2. It's essentially going to do this is the draw your second card matters payoffs, one of those cards, and it's a solid creature. So that's why I picked that, but I didn't run this particular one because I think I got 2 of them. Quarrel's End is actually a pretty solid draw spell. The fact that it costs 3 mana, yeah, it kind of sucks, but the fact that it makes a 1/1 as well, it kind of counterbalances and makes that mana payoff worth it. And then Cast into Fire, this is just a solid, if you have issues with artifacts, this is a great answer. And it also has the dealing 1 damage to 2 targets is actually a pretty solid clause, but I just decided not to run them. This particular, so if you notice, there's one card in a sleeve still. I kept this one in a sleeve because, you know, that's a foil Orcish Bowmaster. Normally, I kind of unsleeve everything and then go through the decks, but yeah, this particular card, it was an easy pick, and I decided to go black-white, so it was already in my color, so I kept that sleeved up, but that I definitely did not want to de-sleeve whenever I did this particular video, so that's the reason why that there, I mean, it's kind of obvious right there. We got, starting off with the You Cannot Pass, I really like that card. Golem's Bite is actually pretty solid removal that allows you to tempt as well. And there's plenty of things that have a 2-butt that, or less than 2 power, or a battle trick at instant speed. This was pretty solid. Nimble Hobbit, we've already discussed. Westfold Rider. So this particular deck, I actually went black-white with a splash of red and humans. And the fact that it's a 2-mana, 3-1, I'm not the biggest fan myself, but it is a human that has the destroy target artifact or enchantment clause. Yes, you can only do it at sorcery speed, but this is one of those main board interactions that I was able to actually get rid of a Grond, I'm sorry, not Gond, Grond the Siegebreaker. So it's just a pretty solid card. Once again, that 2-mana 2/2 vigilance that gets rid of orcs or goblins. I believe I ran a couple of those, yep. Nasty End is one of those fun cards I like to run. It's a similar to, I forget, the Deadly Dispute, I believe, and only drawback is, you know, it doesn't make a treasure, which is fine. But the fact that if you sacrifice a legendary creature, you're able to draw 3 cards instead, it's actually a pretty solid draw card spell in black. Hobbit Sting, we kind of discussed already. That's a pretty obvious reason to run. It's just solid removal. This is just card draw that makes a dude as well. It's actually pretty solid. And Amassing Orcs, I feel like, is actually a pretty strong deck type to go with. So I like that. Aowen Lady of Rohan, she's not the best card, and especially if you're not doing the equipment thing, it really didn't help. The main reason I ran her is it's a 3-mana 2/4 that has human on it. And so that's kind of the reason why I ran this particular card. The Earthfaring, Eastfaring Farmer, it's a solid 3-mana 2/3 that essentially pumps, and then the pump gets bigger if there's more food, and it also makes a food as well. So that's kind of why I ran that one. That's not too bad. Rosie Cotton of South Lane is a really absurd card, especially if you get certain cards with her. The fact that, like, these two is a perfect example. Let's say turn 2 I played something else, turn 3 I'll play Rosie, gives the other creature a +1/+1 counter, and then you play the Eastfaring Farmer, that's 2 food plus a +1/+1 counter from that, so this, the farmer will give +2/+2 to something and just swing in. Just a lot of synergies and a lot of power. And speaking of synergies, Horn of Gondor is an absurd card that everyone at the table, whenever they saw that I had it, they kind of groaned, because this is one of those cards that if you don't have an answer, like I said was earlier, when it's one of those artifacts that if you don't have an answer to either the board state itself or the artifact itself, it just runs away with the game. Just doubling your sheer number of tokens is absurd. I mean, doubling that with Rosie, essentially, depending on how you do it, either have a really wide team of 2/2s or have a really absurdly tall thing, or big thing, I'm sorry. And then Protector of Gondor is one of those really good cards I discussed before. It's 4 mana, 4 power, and makes more humans. Helps with the Horn of Gondor. And I had 3 of them, so it's kind of absurd amount, so I never had an issue with playing that. Another one of those synergies is Mirkwood Bats. Essentially, I was able to kill an opponent with Mirkwood Bats and the Horn of Gondor, because I wasn't able to swing in and get in with all the damage, but every turn I just kept on making a bunch of dudes that would drain them every time I made them because of the Mirkwood Bats. Now, mind you, it says whenever you create tokens or sacrifice a token, so it's not whenever the token dies. I know some people may have got that misconception, but that's a really strong card. We have Erkenbrand, Lord of Westfold. I never pulled this off. I always either had the mountains in play but never had Erkenbrand, or I had Erkenbrand with no mountains in play. But this plus Horn of Gondor just gives the entire board an absurd trigger, because it triggers whenever he enters or whenever a human enters your side of the battlefield. So multiple humans entering the battlefield is going to be multiple triggers all at once. So that's just an absurd combo. Once again, now for Wrath, now for Ruin is one of those cards that's just an amazing finisher. We have ourselves a Bitter Downfall. It's just a solid removal spell. Yes, at the most value, you pay 4 mana to kill something at instant speed, and then I had a plenty of 1/1s that I can chump with and then kill something for 1 mana, so there's that. Eagles of the North is one of those land cyclers that are just really strong, so early on, if you need the mana, land cycle. Late game, just a bird that pumps the team with first strike and just attacks. This is that human I talked about, so decent on the high end. And once again, this is another one of those cards that you were looking to land cycle and then go grab. But yeah, that's the 2 decks. This particular one actually did not perform the best. I did go 2-1 in the 3 rounds that we played, and the only person I lost to was the person that got first place. So it's like, it's not the worst. They were able to kind of eke me out because I did play the Horn of Gondor every game. Unfortunately, I did not win in the end, which it is what it is. That's Magic for you. And then I do have a couple prize packs. I'm going to save the Commander Master preview deck for another time. I see the video is going a little bit longer, so let's go ahead and crack into the prize pack, see if we get anything good on top of everything else that we've already gotten. Maybe we'll get ourselves another ring. Let's see. Nothing too crazy there. Commons and uncommons. There we go. Kind of go through these pretty quickly. And then I do have a couple of code cards that I'm just going to flash on the screen real quick in a minute. Got ourselves a foil. We got ourselves a Fanghorn as well. Not the craziest. I think I already have all of that particular art, funny enough. So we have these, more commons and uncommons. Nothing too crazy there. And then one last pack. Let's see what we got here. Got ourselves a Spirit, Forest, and hey, look, another Elrond. So we got I think it's going to be Elrond number 3 for my collection right there. So there we go. That is the prize packs. Actually, not too bad of a pack right there. And then let's go ahead. I have a bunch of these random code cards. Here's a couple here. I think there's another one. There we go. Let's go ahead and just flash all these at the same time. Do please keep in mind that there are others that like to use these as well. If you've already used a couple, please try and, hold off. If not, I mean, if you're the only one that gets them, you get them. So best of luck to you. Hopefully you get something nice. Hopefully you get something that you enjoy. But there you go. Hopefully I'm going to keep the draft deck breakdowns to at least a once a week thing, so please look forward to that. I do have some Commander Masters product or I say some. I have one Commander Masters collector booster box that I was able to pick up at a pretty decent price, so I'm going to be making sure to open that particular box for everyone on the channel. I know it sucks that there's only 4 packs per box, but it is what it is. As fun as the Commander Masters is, it is kind of an expensive product, so here's hoping that if you guys do get into it, try and get it at a decent price. And then I'm really looking forward to the Wilds of Eldraine, especially with the bonus stuff or the stuff that they've previewed so far. Here's hoping that I get me one of the anime cards that they've released, and I'm super hyped about that. But anyway, thank you again so much. If you guys make it to this point of the video, thank you once again. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for taking the time to just watch the video and enjoy my commentary, my additions to things. Do look forward to that other video coming soon. And never forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. That's very important. That does help me a lot. I really appreciate if you guys take the time to do that. I know that there's been a little bit more activity when it comes to certain comments, and I do read every single comment that comes through. So thank you again, everyone. I do appreciate it, and never forget, Senpai didn't notice. Good night.